Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Kardashian family's connection to P. Diddy, because it looks like it's pretty much over for him, like he's screwed. But now the question is he going to take anybody down with him? You know, because he has a lot of dirt on celebrities, but that also means there's a good chance he just gets Epsteined, because there are a lot of high-profile people that I'm sure are really scared of what could come out about them, and it seems like the Kardashians are probably some of those people, because it looks like they were pretty good friends with him. I mean, they've known him for decades. They've talked about going to his parties. There are a ton of pictures of them together, especially with the mom. She used to post pictures with him all the time. She seemed to be really close with him, and she said he has the best parties, and she loves him.
Hey, go, Chris.
Love you guys. Love you.
Love. Till we'll meet on the dance floor soon.
Oh,
Done deal.
please.
Done deal.
Yes.
No doubt.
Give the
Love.
best parties.
And the mom's boyfriend who's with her there, Corey, he's really close with P. Diddy. He's known him and his family for a long time. And he used to manage Justin Bieber when he was younger, who people definitely seem to think was taken advantage of by P. Diddy and probably Corey and the Kardashians. And one time on their show, Khloe actually talked about being at one of Diddy's parties with Justin, and she said half the people there were naked. So it sounds like it was one of his freak-offs. You know, he probably had to restock on baby oil after that night.
So who was with you this weekend?
A bunch of my friends.
Diddy, Quincy, Justin Bieber,
So far,
French
so good.
Montana.
I got on a plane at 5:30 a.m. Go to this party. I think half the people there were butt naked. You would have loved it.
Have you met Chloe's new, crew of friends?
No. Well, kind of.
You did?
Yeah.
Stop
Have
talking.
you met Chloe's new crew of friends?
And apparently Khloe first started partying with Diddy when she was only 16. She went on tour with him, and he was like 30. And then she dated all these rappers that are really close to him that she probably met through his freak-offs. Like Trey Songz, he was good friends with Diddy, and he was actually involved in a sexual assault lawsuit with him. And then French Montana, there are rumors he's more than just friends with Diddy. And of course, he also had his own SA lawsuit. And then also The Game, you know, same thing. He was close to Diddy and has also been accused of SA and actually lost his lawsuit. He was ordered to pay $7 million. And Khloe, she moved in with him when she was only 17. And she said she's known him since she was 14. So it sounds like she could have been groomed by Diddy and some of these other rappers. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if her mom was encouraging it. I mean, she probably just saw this as an opportunity to get closer to Diddy herself, you know, and make connections and further her and her daughter's careers, you know, because that's all she cares about is just fame, money, power. It doesn't matter what it takes. I mean, this family has no morals. Like this post said, Kris Jenner and her whole family would hang around Jeffrey Epstein or Harvey Weinstein if it brought them money and fame. Which it seems like they kind of proved here with Diddy. You know, they'll hang around whoever as long as it can help further their careers. Like also another good family friend of theirs is the guy who started Girls Gone Wild, Joe Francis. And he helped Kim shop around her tape when it was leaked. And then he eventually, of course, got in some legal trouble for filming underage girls and assault. And when that happened, Kim was wearing a Free Joe shirt. So the Kardashians are a real classy family. I mean, they love hanging out with these complete degenerates because that's exactly what they are. I mean, Kim is just a glorified adult film star, and the mom is basically her and the rest of the daughters' pimp. You know, this family is so trashy. Like, they also used to have a stripper pole in their house that they had Kylie using at 9 years old during the show. During the first episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, she's swinging around on a stripper pole, and Kim is like really impressed by it. And if that's not weird enough, then there's this really creepy scene where the girls are being babysat by their brother, and he invites this creepy friend over, and they start chasing him around with a belt. And then Kylie starts talking about their family's favorite show, Girls Gone Wild, and she wants to film a parody of it. So her and her sister go over to the stripper pole, and her sister gets out a camera to record her. And then their brother's friend walks in there. He's like, "What's going on in here?" And he grabs the camera. He's like, "Oh, let me record this." And the whole thing is just so creepy.
What's that pink hat?
I thought you were gonna bring over some chicks.
I thought you had chicks here.
Oh, here they are. Yeah. Yeah, get them. Hey, you guys, mess with them for a little while. I'm just gonna lay down real quick.
No.
What's your name?
I'm Frankie. Hi, are you good? Brody? Oh my God! This was trying to hit me. Oh. What are you doing?
Girls Gone Wild! Girls Gone Wild!
Hold on. No. I gotta shoot this.
Are you recording?
I'll shoot it.
Girls Gone Wild is like this.
You girls are a little crazy, but you know what? I'm gonna start managing you girls. We're gonna put this like on YouTube or something because it's gonna be amazing.
What the are you doing?
It's the reel, bro. They need a reel.
Turn that thing off. You are not managing my little sister on a stripper pole.
Yes.
And as I come in.
The reel.
And even if this scene is staged, I don't know if it makes it any better. You know, if Chris is telling her kids to act like this around a grown man on national TV, I mean, that would be so weird, but I wouldn't put it past her. I mean, a normal parent's reaction to this, they'd be horrified, but with Chris, she's probably proud of it. Just like how she's probably proud that Kylie started talking to her first rapper when she was 14, and then she started dating him when she was like 16 or 17, and he made this really creepy song about her and how young she is. And then also around that time, both the younger sisters started hanging around P. Diddy and pretty much every other rapper, which again, for any normal parent, it would be their worst nightmare. But for Kris Jenner, this is going as planned. You know, this is basically what she's hoping for. Like, she's grooming them for these rappers. And it's crazy to think, if this is what she's doing with her own kids in the public eye, then what the hell are they doing with trafficking victims at P. Diddy parties? Or even Justin Bieber. I mean, he seems to be really traumatized from it all. Like, he started partying with Diddy when he was 15, and then as he got older, he stopped hanging out with him as much, and then P. Diddy confronted him about it, and Justin looked so uncomfortable, like he wanted nothing to do with him.
Justin, you ever seen the movie 48 Hours? Right now, he's having 48 hours with Diddy, him and his boy. They're having the times of their lives, like you know, where we hanging out and what we doing. We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. You know, I have been given custody of him. You know, he signed to Usher.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full crazy.
I'm going crazy.
Starting to act different, huh? You ain't been calling me and hanging out the way we used to hang out.
Well, I mean, you try to get in contact with me, you know, through all my, partners and whatnot. Mm-hmm. But you never really got my number, so.
Right. Okay.
My number?
Yeah.
And then around this time, the Kardashians got their hands on him, and they started using him to increase their fame. Like Kim, she did this photo shoot with him when he was 16 and she was 30, and it got a lot of attention for how inappropriate it was, but that's probably what Kim wanted. And then at some point, Kourtney started hooking up with him, and then I think Kylie or Kendall, maybe, I don't know, basically the whole family. And I'd imagine they used their relationships with him as publicity stunts. And remember, the mom, she started dating Justin's manager around this time, Kourtney. So this shit runs deep. And there's a lot going on here, and these people are just the worst. You know, Hollywood just needs to be purged at this point. And if you guys want to hear more about that, how terrible Hollywood is, I have a video about it on Patreon, along with over, I think, 100 other videos, exclusive videos, and most of them are over 20 minutes. So if you're a fan of the channel, if you like this video, there's a lot to go through. I talk about a ton of different stuff on there. It's definitely worth it if you want to keep up with everything. Make sure you check it out. Put a link in the description. All right, so we have a wild story here. A former JRE guest who was just on the podcast only a month ago and was brought on as somebody who is supposed to be an example of a reformed criminal who was mistreated by the system and received an unfair punishment for his crime. But he turned out to be an example of the exact opposite. And to say this podcast aged horribly is an understatement, because just recently, this former JRE guest, Sheldon Johnson, was arrested for murdering somebody, dismembering their body, and storing it in a freezer. And when he was on Joe's podcast, people were really skeptical of him, and they had a feeling he didn't change at all. Even though I don't think anybody expected it to be this bad, but people could definitely tell this guy was full of shit. Like this person says, this guy's a textbook thug. Some guys spent a lot of time in prison creating the perfect story how the justice system did them wrong and how what they did wasn't deserving of their punishment. They leave out or recontextualize all the parts of their story which make them look bad. They also are hardened gang leaders and criminals, as Johnson was. So often good at manipulation. His life story, he told Joe, was packed full of appeals to emotion instead of valid explanations. And then they also go on to say they don't like how Josh Dubin operates himself. And that's the guy who brought Sheldon Johnson on Joe's podcast. He's a civil rights attorney who's been on there a handful of times to talk about criminal justice reform. And he usually brings on somebody who is wrongfully convicted, somebody who's actually screwed by the system. And the fans seem to enjoy those podcasts. So Josh should have just stuck to bringing on people like that. But instead, he decided to push his luck with this last one. And now I think it's safe to say we never see him on Joe's podcast again. I mean, he lost a lot of credibility here, if not all of it. You got to do a better job at vetting people, especially if you're bringing them on the biggest podcast in the world. I mean, Josh is obviously a terrible judge of character. He called Sheldon a miracle and a marvelous human being. And also on the pod, Josh kept trying to downplay Sheldon's crimes by saying he did 25 years for only 2 stitches.
It's pretty astounding how he was treated by the system. Another miracle sitting to my right, just like a marvelous human being who was basically told by a judge, by an African-American judge, that you don't matter, you don't count, and I'm going to throw your life away for a crime in which the victim received 2 stitches.
And you were in for 25
years and 5 months.
For 2 stitches.
2 stitches.
Jesus.
And I want to make clear one thing that has always struck me about Sheldon is his vulnerability, but also his honesty. He's like, he'll be the first to tell you out of the gate, I did it. He's not asking for a pass based on his conditions. What he's always said to me was, I just want people to consider how it may have impacted me. To me, you just can't ignore it. It doesn't say, well, poor Sheldon. I think that because I guess, I know him, the human being.
Yeah, well, apparently you don't. I mean, this could not have aged any worse. And like I said, even right when this podcast came out, a lot of the fans are like, how are we supposed to sympathize with this guy? He's a drug trafficker and committed multiple robberies, one in which a gun was involved. And somebody else is like, seriously, of all the innocent people out there that need help, this criminal gets a spotlight. And it is crazy. He had only been out of prison for less than a year, and he somehow managed to bullshit his way onto the Joe Rogan Experience. And this proves Joe is pretty bad at sensing BS. But also, even if he did think Sheldon was full of shit during the podcast, I don't know if you'd really want to question him too much or call him out on it. But I don't think that was the case. I don't think he was scared to. I think he just put all his trust into Josh and figured he was vetting these people extensively and he wouldn't bring on some guy that would go on to dismember somebody only a month later. But also, like I showed, a lot of fans could tell this guy was full of shit. So Joe should have known something was up here. He should have been able to tell a little bit. Like also just hearing this guy explain why he's arrested, he doesn't sound very remorseful. And even though Josh is like, he's so honest, he'll be the first to tell you he screwed up. When Sheldon actually talks about it, it doesn't really sound like that. He's trying to rationalize it and downplay it and act like the system is the problem here.
And when I saw him, he had a bunch of jewelry on. He was with his girlfriend. She had a bunch of jewelry on. And I said, hey, man, where's my money at? Oh, I was going to pay you. So I robbed him. And I took his jewelry. And his girlfriend happened to be there, and unfortunately, she got caught up in the situation. I had a bunch of young guys with me, and they robbed her as well. And he got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he got 2 stitches. And they gave me 25 years for that case. Like I said, we go back to morals and values and principles and how warped they can be, right? In my mind at the time, this is a guy who I gave something to. He's living an illegal life. I'm living an illegal life. So as far as I was concerned at that time, it was fair game. In hindsight, as I moved on and I became more mature and I began to reevaluate myself, I realized how wrong that was. But that was later on. Another guy that I ran into, he also owed me some money. He owed me $7,000, and it kind of went along the same ways. He was selling drugs out of an auto parts store. Reading in between the lines and outside the margins without really going into all of the details, I robbed him because he owed me $7,000.
Did he get physically hurt?
No. He didn't get touched. Got roughed up a little bit, but There was no physical harm, nothing. Back to morals and values and principles, right? In my mind, he was fair game. He's selling drugs, I'm selling drugs, you owe me money, I came to take what you have. In that world, that was considered as permissible. These are one of the rules of something that was permissible in that world. Long story short, in December 1997, I get arrested. He just called me a menace to society, and he gave me 50 years.
Yeah, so you could tell he hadn't really given that life up. You know, he's acting like he was just doing his job, getting the money he was owed, and it's not that big of a deal. It's just how the streets work. So he feels like he was taken advantage of by the system. And there's another moment where I think you could definitely tell he hadn't changed, when he's talking about gang life and how he gave it up. And he said it benefited them because he was the top guy and he was an authoritarian. He was really strict. And then he says it was to their advantage to get rid of me anyway. And once he says that, you can tell he is not over it. And Joe actually does ask him what he means by that. So I think maybe he did sense something here.
And I ended up getting to school program. I got my GED. I left the gangs alone, which was a benefit for them because, you know, I was what you call an authoritarian. I was a rule guy. I'm still a rule guy. I like rules. You know, I like rules. I like structure. I like things to be a certain way. And it was to their advantage to get rid of me anyway. Plus, I knew a lot of the guys who were at the top.
Why was it to their advantage to get rid of you?
Because I was the type of person who would say, you doing that for what reason? Nah, you can't do that. The rule says that you can't do this, you can't do this. This is what the rules say.
And another giant red flag during this podcast was the way he talked about his son getting arrested. You know, of course, this guy's son has been arrested, his dad has been arrested, his grandfather has been arrested, but then it's the system's fault. So the way Sheldon describes his son getting arrested, first of all, he uses it as an example of how quickly your life can get flipped upside down for such a simple mistake, as he describes it. And he acts like his son was just out minding his own business. And then he happened to get in a fight with somebody, and then they ran into the road and got hit by a car and died. But the real story is his son and his friend went out and tried to rob this guy, and they attacked him, and he tried to run away, or he was stunned or something, and then he ran into the road and got hit by a car and died. And again, this is something the fans picked up on right away. Like this person said, the way Johnson talks about the student whom his son tried to rob as an Asian guy or this Chinese guy is really jarring. He's more than just his race. He was a brilliant statistician whose contributions are still commemorated by the Columbia Statistics Department with an annual conference in his honor. But the way Sheldon describes it here, it's just like, you know, shit happens. Some Chinese guy ran the street and died. My kid got in trouble for it. And this is why Josh Dubin is completely delusional. You know, he's just talking about how vulnerable and honest this guy is.
Like my son, when he got into a fight with an Asian guy. They called him the Columbia law student killer, right? He gets into a fight with this Chinese guy. And this is not to take away anything from that man's family. And, you know, as a man, as his father, I felt some type of way. But the guy goes into the street and gets hit by a car and he dies. But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake. From one mistake. And I just feel like, you know, a lot of times these conditions are created and there's really no alternatives.
Yeah, so this is obviously really embarrassing for Joe and Josh. You know, this is not a good look. Even though it is just crazy to look back on this podcast, you know, it does show how deceptive and manipulative people can be, and I'm sure it'll be studied in the future. But I don't know if this whole situation could have gone any worse. You know, and this guy, he had a good opportunity. He could have turned things around. He could have made a positive impact, but he just couldn't give up that life. And instead of proving that the system was flawed and he was being mistreated, he proved that the system had the right idea here. And now I'm sure this will be a setback to any kind of criminal justice reform. So Josh Dubin did the exact opposite of what he was trying to accomplish. So that's about it here, but make sure you guys go check out my Patreon account. There's a ton of extra content up there. Like I recently talked about what happened to the Death Squad, why Joe Rogan and his friends stopped calling themselves that. And I think there are probably over 70 videos on there at this point, and most of them are pretty long and I post every week. So if you want some extra content, you want to stay up to date on everything, make sure you go check it out. If you like the channel, I'm sure you enjoy it. And then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video. All right, so it looks like the era of comedians talking about how cancel culture has ruined comedy and how it's made their job extremely difficult now and they can't do and say what they want anymore is starting to come to an end, because now we have comedians like Tony Hinchcliffe, who people would say was canceled and was involved in controversy for telling a joke. We have him admitting that he doesn't think comedians can actually get canceled for telling a joke, and most of the time when they get canceled, it only helps their career, which is pretty surprising that Tony would actually admit it. But I respect the fact that he did, because, you know, he's somebody that's been through that kind of controversy, and he could just be like, man, they're trying to cancel me all the time. My job is so difficult. I'm trying to defend free speech up there. I'm the last line of defense, like Joe Rogan saying. But instead, he's just like, yeah, it's not what people make it out to be. Most of the time, if you're a good comedian and you get canceled, it's only going to help your career.
And like when I went up 4 or 5 days after that incident for the first time ever, the boom was crazier than ever. And I'm like, oh, okay. I just don't think you can get canceled for a joke. You know, I've noticed that anyone who gets canceled for a joke, in trouble for a joke, if they're funny, it accelerates their career 100-fold. This happened to Shane Gillis.
Yeah, with Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, and you look at that mistake.
But now he's bigger than Saturday Night Live would have ever made him.
Exactly. In fact, he might be bigger than Saturday Night Live, period. He might have more people watching him and paying him and seeing him live and everything than the entire show's cast. I don't think there's anybody there. I think if you combine the entire cast and looked at their ticket sales, I don't think they are anywhere near what he's doing. I mean, he's an absolute monster, and more importantly, he's one of the best. So if they try, same thing happened with Ari Shaffir, another great comedian. These people are thriving, including myself. If it's not right, if it's for a joke, you're only going to help the person. And during the few days, like I said, yeah, I was stressed then because I didn't see it so clearly.
Yeah, and I'm sure in the middle of all the controversy with Tony and Shane, that was probably awful, like dealing with all the death threats and everything. And I'm sure for a second, they're probably like, oh my God, is my career over? But I don't even know if they thought that. You know, like Shane said, he was just going to go on Joe Rogan right afterwards and he'll be fine. So it really just turns out to be free marketing most of the time. And comedians have obviously realized this. Like Matt Rife with his most recent special, you know, if the cancel culture people really wanted to get at him, just ignore him. Like, don't cancel him, because obviously that's the reaction he wanted. And I'm sure it went exactly how he expected it to go, maybe even better. And then also there's Andrew Schultz. You could tell he plays into this a lot. You know, he's always trying to act like he's this controversial comedian that's saying stuff that you're not supposed to. But I don't know if I've seen him even really go through any controversy like that. I feel like he just kind of makes it up half the time. And he always acts like he's saving comedy with everything he does. Like this intro he has to one of his specials on YouTube. He's like, right now, comedy is dead. Cancel culture has ruined it. You can't say what you want. But I'm here to bring back the flagrancy, and I'm not afraid to make edgy jokes and all this stuff. And looking back on it, it just seems really cringy. And he also used this to market his last special. So he knows what he's doing. But now that the tide is starting to turn and people are like, all right, comedians are getting a little too carried away with how important their job is and how they're defending free speech and everything. Like, let's take it easy a little bit. I mean, you know it's bad when even comedians like Tony Hinchcliffe are admitting that it's not that serious, you know, because he's also really good friends with Joe Rogan, and I think Joe might have a different opinion on that.
Say, you know, in the comedy world, we say we're the last line of defense, because this is where the woke meets the wall. The woke meets the wall with stand-up comedy.
And also, I just want to clarify, you know, the people trying to cancel comedians, those people suck. You know, obviously those people are way too sensitive and everything. But at this point, with where these comedians' careers are at right now, it doesn't seem like cancel culture is that bad, in terms of comedy at least, and making jokes. And now looking back on it, it seems like it's only helped comedy. You know, at the time, like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I could see how comedians would be like, oh, this might hurt comedy. But now at this point, you know, it's hard to complain about cancel culture when you're selling out Madison Square Garden. And I'm sure Tony Hinchcliffe realized that, and that's why he admits cancel culture isn't that big of a deal in terms of comedy. And same thing with Shane Gillis, you know, I'm sure he would admit that as well. So two people that have been canceled admit it's not that big of a deal. Like SNL was just canceling themselves by getting rid of Shane Gillis. You know, that was just a nail in the coffin for them. And I'm sure every day Lorne Michaels is just like, oh, I wish we could have kept Shane. You know, his Donald Trump impression on SNL SNL would be killing right now. And like Tony was just saying, Shane is bigger than SNL, so they needed him way more than he needed them. And also, Shane handled all the controversy really well. Like, he didn't just turn into some free speech activist like I'm sure some other people would have. I mean, you could tell he doesn't even like talking about it really, and he just laughs at it, you know, because he's like, oh yeah, they really got me, they really canceled me.
That makes them sad.
Yeah.
What makes them happy is so they can get you fired.
Yeah. And they did. They did a good job.
Yeah, good job, everybody.
Yeah, and it's fine. Look.
And the comedians like Shane, who don't really talk about it too much and don't act like it's this terrible thing for comedy, are the ones that are going to be more successful, you know, because they're just focused on being funny and entertaining. They don't care about making it seem like they're doing this really difficult thing and comedy is so hard, when in reality, they're doing just fine. Like, also, somebody posted this compilation to Joe Rogan's subreddit of comedians that admit, like, yeah, cancel culture isn't that big of a deal. You know, like Dan Soder, he talks about it. And then Mark Normand, somebody brought this up to him. He's like, yeah, we're kind of done crying about cancel culture. It's not that serious.
It's made up.
Yeah.
It's the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, yeah.
Dude,
for a lot of these
people get in trouble.
Yeah.
There are people who get in trouble.
Yeah.
But no one's canceled.
Yeah, comedy's great right now. Comedy's
you guys are. It's definitely like a little golden age.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because you wouldn't think it because all you guys are crybabies about your cancel culture, but you're all millionaires now. It's hard to be a comic. You're all millionaires. Shut up.
Yeah, most of us have pulled back on the whining.
Yeah. Comics have started to take themselves quite seriously.
Dude, it's wild.
You know? And then, but is it swinging?
I'm
back
enjoying it because I don't give a
Yeah,
so it's like fun for me.
Right,
watching friends of mine be like, I got to stand up. You're like, dude, you're not a civil rights marcher in Selma.
Right.
You're a guy working a Funny Bone, sold out 5 shows. You're doing all right.
Yeah, so it's good that these comedians realize it, even though I would like to hear somebody bring this up to Joe Rogan when he's going on about it. You know, that'd be hilarious. So I wanted to play a few more clips from the Howie Mandel, Tony Hinchcliffe podcast, because also Tony said, this is pretty funny, that the agent that dropped him right when he got canceled, now they're begging for him to come back.
You know, and you've been canceled even here. Did that bother you? I know that the agent. I'm with your agent. I'm with your old agent. I'm with WME.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, they wish they were my new agent too. Now,
Yeah.
they've been chomping at the bit. Hey, Tony, you know, we'd love to. You know, that came from above. That wasn't us. We'd love to.
Really? Are they coming back?
They wish. Well, now I'm with the head of UTA.
Yes, right,
Literally,
right.
their worst nightmare. So it's fun.
Yeah, so you could tell Tony loves how things played out here. You know, because also if your agent drops you for making a joke, you really wouldn't want to be with them to begin with. And now them begging him to come back and realizing they made a huge mistake is perfect karma. You know, just like with Shane Gillis and SNL, that agency needed Tony way more than he needs them. So if these companies want, they can continue to cave to the mob and all the fake outrage on Twitter and fire people whenever they go through some controversy, but it's only going to hurt themselves. Like also, for example, that country singer, Morgan Wallen, who is insanely popular now, but I'm sure a lot of people first discovered him when he said the N-word and went through a ton of controversy with that. And he's pulled from a bunch of radio stations. He was suspended by his label. He was dropped by his agent, I believe. But then his sales right after that shot up 1,220%. And now he's one of the most famous country singers alive. And now I'm sure the agency that dropped him is thinking the same thing that Tony's former agent is. You know, I'm sure they beg him to come back every day. So if that's what getting canceled is, becoming one of the most famous musicians alive, then it doesn't really seem that bad. Also, I believe Morgan did apologize for it, but with Tony, he didn't, which was definitely a smart move. And like he says right here, that is probably what would have actually canceled him.
But what they kept saying is what stuck with me, which is say nothing. If you explain what happened, then what the hell are we talking about here? You're explaining a joke. And if you apologize for a joke, which was the farthest, which was the last thing that I wanted to do. And each one of my wildly successful friends that were recommending that, I was listening to them. I was taking in the information. I wasn't saying, no, I'm not going to do that. But I was saying, you know, I was asking questions and trying to figure it out, but it was never an option. I mean, as corny as it sounds, but like apologizing for a joke in my world, I think that would have canceled me. To my base, to the people that watch Kill Tony, that have seen me do a billion worse things on Mondays and everyone laughs and we move on.
And I think he's definitely right, you know, because his fan base and most people did not care at all. Like, I guarantee the only people that were outraged by it were people that hated him to begin with, or just hated like Joe Rogan and his whole comedy circle. So it's not like he was losing anybody. I mean, like he basically admits, he probably only gained fans with that, you know, because again, it's just free marketing. And most people had his back and defended him, you know, which is good. You know, like when people are going through controversy like this, it is good for people to talk about it and defend him and everything. But looking back on it, I mean, even he admits his career wasn't really in jeopardy or anything like that, unless he did apologize. You know, that probably would have had the worst effect on it. But he made the right moves, and now he probably has the most popular live comedy show in the world, I'd say. You know, he's selling out Madison Square Garden, and now he has this funny story to tell. And that guy Peng Dang, he basically just outed himself. Like, nobody really wants to work with him now. Like, he's the one that got canceled. So things worked out pretty well here. But let me know what you guys think about it all down in the comments. And then make sure you go check out my Patreon account. I actually have a whole video on there about Tony's controversy. And then also I have one about the basketball game that almost ruined Matt and Shane's relationship with Big J Okerson. That was hilarious. And there's a ton of other stuff, probably around 60 videos at this point. There's a lot to go through. So if you like the channel and want more content, make sure you go check it out. I'll put a link in the description. And then hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.